The gate guard at St. Mathilde General wouldn't even look me in the eye. "Ma'am, I really think you should head home." His voice was barely above a whisper, and his hand was already inching toward the little black phone on the wall like he needed an excuse to end the conversation. "Doctor, Marsh isn't available for visitors right now." I shifted Ren higher on my hip. She was getting too big to carry like this, almost 6, but she'd insisted on wearing her good red coat and her good shoes, because today was the day she got to bring Daddy the lunch we'd packed together. Butter tarts. Because Julian always said nobody made butter tarts like his daughter, even though I was the one who'd actually rolled the dough. "I'm his wife," I said. "The way you say something you've said 1,000 times before. The way you say your own name. I'm not a visitor. I just need to drop this off for him before his rounds." The guard's ears went red. He was young, maybe 22. The kind of kid who'd taken this job because his mother told him hospital security was steady work, and he clearly had not been trained for whatever this was. He cleared his throat. "There's someone with him right now. A personal guest." I felt my smile go a little stiff at the corners, the way it does when you're trying to hold a door shut with your face. Julian doesn't take personal guests during rounds. He's the chief of surgery. He has a schedule down to the minute. The guard wouldn't meet my eyes. "Ma'am, I was told specifically, Dr. Marsh's, his friend from law school, Larissa. She came up from the airport this morning and she's still with him, in his office." It was the way he said his office that did it, not the conference room, not the cafeteria. His office, with the door that locked. The door I'd kissed him goodbye in front of every weekday morning for 9 years. I have replayed that moment more times than I can count, the way you replay a car accident, trying to find the half second where you could have swerved. Ren was looking up at me with her father's pale gray eyes, utterly unbothered, swinging the little Tupperware of butter tarts by its handle, humming something from the cartoon she'd watched that morning. And I remember thinking, very clearly, very calmly, the way you think when your body has already decided to go cold and quiet before your mind catches up. I am not going to let her see my face do what it wants to do right now. "Ren, sweetheart," I said, crouching down so we were eye level. "Mommy needs to talk to the nice man for 1 second. Can you hum your song a little louder for me? Right in my ear?" She giggled and did exactly that, pressing her small mouth close to my ear and humming. And under the cover of that small, ridiculous, perfect noise, I asked the guard the only question that mattered. "How long has she been here?" He swallowed. "Since Tuesday, ma'am. It was Friday. I want to tell you," I screamed. "I want to tell you I marched past that boy and kicked down Julian's office door like something out of a movie. That I made a scene worthy of being talked about in the staff lounge for years. I didn't do any of that. I stood up, I took Ren's hand, and I walked back to the car as if I had simply remembered I'd left the stove on. I buckled her into her booster seat. I told her we'd see Daddy another day. And I sat in the driver's seat of my Honda in the staff parking lot of St. Mathilde General Hospital, and I did not start the engine for almost 11 minutes. Then I called my brother. "My name is Sienna. Before I was Sienna Marsh, I was Sienna Whitfield. And there are people in this country, not many but enough, who hear that name and go very quiet. The way you go quiet around old money that doesn't advertise itself. My father built Whitfield Mercantile out of 2 dry goods stores in Halifax into one of the largest private logistics and shipping conglomerates east of Vancouver. And when he died 6 years ago, the company didn't go to me, because I'd never wanted it. It went to my older brother Easton, who runs it like a battleship, and my sister Phoebe, who handles the foundation and all the parts of the business that involve actual human warmth. I was the youngest of 3, and the only one who'd ever wanted a small, ordinary life. I trained as a pediatric occupational therapist. I married a man with kind eyes and an enormous student debt from medical school, and when my father offered, more than once, to simply pay it off, I told him no, that Julian and I would manage it ourselves, because I didn't want my marriage to start with my family's fingerprints all over it. Julian Marsh was not from money. He grew up in Sudbury, the son of a nurse and a man who drove a school bus, and he used to tell people, at dinner parties, with a self-deprecating little laugh that I now understand was never really a joke, that he'd married up. I used to correct him. I'd say, "You didn't marry up, Jules, you married me," and he'd kiss my forehead like that settled it. It did not settle it. I understand that now. 9 years, 1 daughter, 1 Tudor-style house in Forest Hill, that my mother-in-law still calls more house than a surgeon. And, somewhere along the way, Julian Marsh had decided that being married to me, being the man who walked into rooms as Sienna Whitfield's husband, had become something he resented instead of something he'd chosen. Her name was Larissa Voss. They'd gone to law school together, except Julian had switched to medicine in his 2nd year, and she'd stayed, become a corporate litigator in Vancouver, The kind of woman who wore blazers that cost more than my car payment and who Julian had always described, whenever her name came up, as just an old friend, nothing to worry about. I had believed him. That is the part that still makes my stomach drop, even now. Not that he lied, people lie, but that I had been so sure of him that I had never once checked. My brother Easton answered on the second ring, the way he always does, like he's been sitting with the phone in his hand waiting for something to go wrong. Sienna. Just my name. He could always from the silence before I spoke. I need you to do something for me, I said. And I need you to not ask me why until I've had a chance to say it out loud one time, without crying. There was a pause, and then the particular quiet that meant he was already standing, already moving toward his car, already 3 steps ahead of whatever I was about to tell him. Easton has never once in his life waited to be asked twice. Tell me what you need. The line of credit. The one that goes through Whitfield to Marsh Surgical Holdings. The private clinic Julian's been trying to open downtown. I co-signed the personal guarantee 18 months ago, and Dad's trust still backs 40% of the equity. I need it frozen, today. Before close of business, a beat. Sienna, that's a $4 million build-out. If we pull funding mid-renovation, the contractors walk, the lease defaults, and Marsh Surgical doesn't just stall, it folds. Are you? He's had a woman in his office at the hospital since Tuesday, I said, and my voice finally cracked on the word Tuesday. 4 days. 4 whole days he had let me make a thermos and pack butter tarts and tell our daughter her father couldn't wait to see her. And I sat in a parking lot for 11 minutes deciding whether I was the kind of woman who finds that out and still drives home to make dinner. I heard him exhale slowly through his nose, the sound he makes when he's converting fury into a plan, which is the only thing Easton Whitfield has ever known how to do with fury. Done, he said. It's done, don't drive yet. I'm sending Marguerite to get you and Ren, and I want you both at the house in Rosedale by 6. Don't talk to him, don't text him. Let me make the calls first. Easton. Sienna. His voice gentled just barely, the way it used to when I was 11 and had fallen off my bike in front of the boy I liked. You called me. That means you already know what you want done. Let me do it. I will spare you the next 3 days in detail, because they were not glamorous. They were just hours, long, gray, ordinary hours of sitting in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house while Ren watched too much television and asked, with increasing frequency, when we were going home. I told her Mommy and Daddy needed a little break, the way you do, the careful half-truth you give a 5-year-old. She accepted it with the terrifying ease that children have for accepting whatever adults tell them. Julian called 11 times the first day. I let it go to voicemail every time. By the second day, the calls had a different texture to them. Not apologetic anymore, but anxious, edged with something closer to panic, and that was when I understood that Easton's freeze on the line of credit had landed. It was Phoebe, my sister, who finally filled in the parts I hadn't known to ask about. Phoebe runs the Whitfield Family Foundation. But more usefully, Phoebe is the kind of woman who has coffee with everyone, who knows the assistant of the hospital's CFO, who can find out in 48 hours what a private investigator would take 3 weeks to confirm. She came to my mother's house on the 3rd evening with her laptop and a face I had not seen on her since our father's funeral. Sit down, she said. I don't want to sit down, Sienna, sit down. Larissa Voss was not in Toronto on a personal visit. She was there as outside counsel for a numbered holding company that had, over the past 14 months, been quietly acquiring surgical-grade equipment contracts on behalf of Marsh Surgical Holdings. Contracts that, on paper, ran through legitimate Canadian medical suppliers, but that Phoebe's contact had traced back to a shell entity registered in the Cayman Islands, moving funds that never matched the invoiced equipment, used MRI components billed at the price of new units, phantom maintenance contracts, a clinic that, beneath its gleaming half-built lobby, was being used to launder money through a network Larissa had apparently designed for at least one other client, already under investigation by the RCMP's Financial Crimes Unit. Julian, Phoebe believed, hadn't built it, but he had signed things. He had signed a great many things, because he trusted Larissa. Because Larissa had told him it was simply how private medical financing worked these days. Because, and this was the detail that finally broke something loose in my chest, more than the affair itself. Because it had been easier for him to believe a woman who flattered his ambition than to ask his own wife a single honest question. He's not just cheating on you, Phoebe said quietly, closing the laptop. He's about to lose his medical license and possibly go to prison for something he was too proud to ask for help with. I sat very still for a long moment, watching the steam rise off the tea my mother had pressed into my hands an hour earlier, and that I had not touched. Does he know you know? Not yet, but the hospital board will, by Monday. Someone on compliance flagged the equipment contracts independently. That part wasn't us. That part was just bad luck on his end. We didn't create this fire, Sienna. We just made sure it couldn't be put out quietly. The board hearing was held the following Thursday in a part of St. Mathilde General I had never had reason to enter. A wood-paneled conference room on the 11th floor with a view of the lake, gray and flat under a November sky. I wasn't required to attend. I went anyway, in the navy coat my mother had insisted I wear. Because Navy says I am not hysterical, I am simply done. And I sat in the back beside Phoebe while 7 board members and the hospital's chief legal counsel asked my husband questions he did not have good answers for. I watched him age in real time. Julian had always carried himself like a man who had never once doubted he belonged in the room. It was part of what I'd loved about him, that easy certainty, back when it had felt like confidence and entitlement. By the end of that hearing, he looked like a man trying to remember how his own hands worked. He saw me near the end. Our eyes met across that long table, and for one terrible second I watched him try to compose his face into the expression that had always worked on me before. The boyish, "Sorry, come on, Sienna, you know me" look, and I felt absolutely nothing move in my chest. Not anger, even. Just a flat, gray stillness like the lake outside the window. He was placed on immediate administrative leave pending the RCMP investigation. Larissa Voss had left the country 2 days prior. I understood later she was eventually located in Vancouver and charged separately, though that part of the stories unfolded slowly, the way these things do, in courtrooms I never had to enter. I filed for divorce the following week. I did not need the Whitfield family lawyers to make it complicated, and I did not let them try. I asked for primary custody of Ren, and a fair, unremarkable division of what little we'd built together that wasn't already compromised by his fraud. I did not ask Easton to bury him further. There's a kind of mercy in simply walking away from someone once you've stopped needing them to suffer for your own peace of mind. And somewhere in that long gray November, I found that I had. People ask me, sometimes, the few who know the whole story, not the version that made the local news for a week as Toronto surgeon faces fraud charges, whether I regret the phone call, whether freezing that line of credit on instinct in a parking lot before I even had proof of anything beyond a guard's red ears and 4 missing days was too much, too fast, too final. I don't regret it. I think about it sometimes the way you think about a door you didn't know was about to slam. If I hadn't called Easton that afternoon, if I'd waited, been reasonable, given Julian the benefit of the doubt, the way I'd given him the benefit of the doubt for 9 quiet years, I don't know that the contracts would ever have surfaced before someone got seriously hurt by faulty refurbished equipment passed off as new. I don't know that Ren wouldn't have grown up visiting her father in a prison further from home than the one he ended up in. After his plea agreement, in exchange for cooperating against the larger network Larissa had been operating. What I know is this: Ren is 7 now. We live in a smaller house in the beaches, close enough to the lake that you can hear the gulls in the mornings. And most Saturdays Easton drives over with his terrible taste in cartoons and lets her boss him around the kitchen while they make pancakes shaped, badly, like Canada geese. Phoebe takes her skating on Sundays. My mother still makes too much tea. Julian writes to her, sometimes from the facility upstate. I read the letters first, the way you're meant to, and then I let her decide, when she's older, what she wants to do with what's left of that relationship. I've told her the truth in pieces small enough for a child to carry. That her father made choices that hurt our family. That it wasn't her fault. That loving someone doesn't mean staying blind to what they do. Last week she asked me, completely out of nowhere, while we were walking Bowser around the block in the cold, whether I was happy. I thought about the parking lot, the 11 minutes, the guard's red ears, the boardroom, the gray lake. Yeah, baby, I told her, and meant it all the way down. I really am.